Today on Alex Autos, we're out here taking a look at the all-new 2015 Lincoln MKC. Let's go a little out of order and talk about the size first, because some people are confused about where the MKC slots against the competition. This is not really an Audi Q3 competitor. This is actually larger than a Q3. This really was designed to give Lincoln something to compete directly with the Q5, the XC60, the X3, and the GLK. The reason for the confusion is that very much like Cadillac and Lexus, they have a vehicle that is larger than this, the Lincoln MKX. Now the Germans don't really have anything that fits in that size category. The MKX, the Cadillac SRX, and the Lexus RX are the next size category up, approximately the same size as a Jeep Grand Cherokee. The big difference is right back here because we get less cargo room than you'll find in the Lexus RX or the Lincoln MKX, and you won't find a third row like you'd find in something like a Volvo XC90. Up front we have Lincoln's new signature split wing grille. I think this actually looks better in person than it does in photos, so if you're looking at one and you have a few doubts, check it out in person first. Our particular model has HID headlamps. We also have these daytime running lamps down here as well. Also up front, you'll notice we have standard active shutter grills on all models. You can barely see them there in the video. I am tweaking them a little bit. This helps improve aerodynamics, and you'll find that on both engines in the MKC. In case you're wondering, just in front of that front wheel that is a parking sensor. That's part of the Lincoln autonomous parking system. Out back, you'll notice that the MKC has a glass that rakes a little bit further forward than some of the entries out there. We also get this very stubby rear end. The key takeaway here, aside from the fact that the bumper is not very far away from the tailgate, is that we actually get about the same interior size, even though this does come up a little bit shorter than some of the competition in the size chart. That's simply because we don't lose any exterior space on overhanging bumpers. The Lincoln engineers gave the MKC a strong shoulder, helping it look a little bit lower and a little bit wider. We also have these tail lamps with LEDs that wrap all the way from one side to the other. Down at the bottom we have a faux metal strip, twin exhaust tips, rear parking sensors, and again you can see that this bumper is a little bit close to the tailgate. It really doesn't stick out that much further. The only takeaway from that is that rear end style accidents may cost a little bit more to repair. The base engine under this hood is a 2-liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It produces 240 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. This may be familiar to you because it's used in a variety of different Ford and Lincoln products. The engine we're taking a look at right here is the up-level 2.3-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, and it produces 285 horsepower and a little over 300 pound-feet of torque. An all 4-cylinder engine lineup isn't unusual in this segment anymore because most manufacturers say that they're moving in this direction. The base engine produces about the same amount of power as everybody else's base 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, and the 2.3-liter is roughly similar to everybody's top-end engine. The important thing to know is that the MKC is one of the lightest entries in this segment, and that really helps out the performance in both engines. Both engines are mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission with available all-wheel drive. The base format is front-wheel drive with that 2-liter engine. The 2.3 gets standard all-wheel drive. 6 speeds is a little bit behind the competition. Most of the entries in this segment do have 7, 8, or even 9 speeds. The reason the number of speeds on the transmission matters is because, in general, the more speeds you get, the better the fuel efficiency you get, and the better acceleration you get. Taking a look at that chart right over on the side of your screen, you can see that this stacks up right about the same as the Lexus NX in real-world driving and the all-wheel drive versions of the Volvo XC60. But you will find better fuel economy in the 2-wheel drive versions of the Volvo and some of the Germans that do use 8-speed automatics. If towing with your compact crossover is your thing, you should know that the tow rating is about average in this segment, but if you step up to the 2.3-liter 4-cylinder engine from the base 2-liter engine, tow capacity actually drops. I'm going to give front seat comfort 6 to 7 out of 10 points. It really depends on your body shape. We do have a tilt telescopic steering column with a large range of motion. It's electric and memory linked in our particular version, manual in the base version. You will find the 3-position seat memory right over here on the door. The driver's seat is a multi-way power driver seat with a 2-way lumbar support, again in our particular model. The reason the MKC loses a few points when it comes to front seat comfort is the length of this seat bottom cushion. It seems a little bit short to me, and a number of passengers also commented on that on the passenger side. Unfortunately, there is no thigh extending option in the MKC, which does mean that taller drivers or people with longer legs may find these seats a little bit less comfortable. On the flip side, of course, people with shorter legs are probably going to find these seats more comfortable. One nice touch is that you can get the passenger seat with the same range of motion as the driver's seat with the right option package. The back seat is where you'll notice the big difference between this and the larger MKX, because I have less legroom back here than in the big Lincoln. I still have a decent amount of room, however. Even though this externally is one of the smaller entries in this segment, on the inside I still have a decent amount of room. I have about 2 inches of legroom sitting right here behind myself. I also have a decent amount of headroom for this category. My hair is barely brushing the ceiling, but we are in the model with the optional panoramic sunroof. A nice touch is that these rear seats do recline. This is the most reclined position, and this is the most upright position, which is mainly used for squaring off that cargo area back there. This recline mechanism does come in nice and low on the rear seat back, so it doesn't hit you in a strange place. Moving over to the middle seat, I actually have a little bit more headroom than I had on the outboard seating positions. This is where you'll notice things like a hard center console, which you don't normally find in this segment. Moving all the way over to the right side of the MKC, this front seat was adjusted for a 6'5" passenger I had in the vehicle. The seat's all the way back in its tracks. My knees are basically touching the seat back, but not digging into it. On the 60% side of the seat back, we have a center armrest with 2 cup holders right there. And one nice touch is that the center seat belt is actually part of the seat back itself. It doesn't come dangling out of the ceiling like you'll find on some of the competition. Makes it a lot easier to fold these seats and then put cargo in the back because you don't have that seat belt dangling around. The rear seats do fold almost completely flat with the cargo area, and you don't have to flip and fold the seat bottom cushion first. You just fold the seat back. A very nice touch is that door parts quality doesn't decline as you go rearward in this cabin, so we get the same soft touch plastics, same wood trim, and same stitched pleather on the door. One area where this Lincoln's dimensions do challenge us a little bit is right back here in the cargo area. I'm going to go ahead and open that with the remote control. Our particular model does have the optional power tailgate. Taller folks will appreciate the fact that this hatch is right about 6 feet tall when it's opened completely. The hatch also doesn't really extend that much further than the rear bumper, which means even if you are taller and you're coming right at the tailgate, it's going to be a lot less likely to bump your head. Now on the downside, we don't get nearly as much storage room back here as you'll find in some of the larger entries in this segment. Of course, in theory, that's what the Lincoln MKX is for, but you will still find more cargo in something like the Volvo XC60. I have 2 large roller bags in there. You can see that they do easily fit. We have a very small cargo cover right there, and we do have a spare tire underneath the cargo load floor. Overall, when it comes to my exclusive trunk comfort index, I'm going to give this 8 out of 10 points. It is furnished very nicely in here. We have some very conveniently located cargo tie downs. I also have a sturdy helper handle right here on the rear tailgate. Very easy to close the tailgate either using the power feature or this handle. Inside we have height adjustable seatbelts for both the driver and the front passenger, and 4-way adjustable headrests. These do ratchet forward and backward. The MKC is a compact luxury crossover, and like many vehicles in this category, you'll notice that the front door does not come quite as far back as the seat will go rearward. That means that taller passengers or taller drivers may hit their arm right there on the B-pillar. Also similar to the competition, you will find imitation leather in the base models of the MKC, real leather in the upper end trims. Moving over to the front door, you'll notice that our particular model is the all-black interior. I think this interior actually looks better in the brown interior shades as well as the two-tone shades that Lincoln has available. Our model has the optional real wood trim right up here on the doors. We also have a stitched pleather insert on the door and soft touch lower armrest right there. You'll find soft touch upper portions on the door and hard plastics lower on the door, including this little storage cubby. Aluminum trim is standard on the MKC, but our model has the optional wood trim, which really takes us up to the next level. Open pore wood trim is not unique to Lincoln. A lot of the manufacturers are doing it now, but it does really look better than a lot of the lacquered versions. You will find a soft touch dashboard all the way up until this upper portion right there by the speaker grille. That is a hard touch plastic up there, nice and high and out of driver's reach or passenger's reach. You'll find soft touch plastics all the way down the dashboard, including the glove box cover. Opening that glove box door, we do find a large and deep glove box. I had no problem inserting large tablet computers right inside. Our model has the optional THX certified surround sound system, 2 large air vents right there. The shifter buttons seem to be very polarizing, although personally I didn't really find them to be a problem. There is a practical side to this versus a physical gear change lever other than a joystick variety. So if we press the D button to be in drive right there, and then we just want to turn off the car, you can just press the start-stop button and the car automatically puts itself in park. Moving down the center console, we have a slot for our optical disc player, and we do have physical buttons for the climate control system, as well as physical knobs and a seek backward and forward button for that infotainment system as well. A lot of this is still controllable in that My Lincoln Touch system, but we do have these physical buttons down here so you can choose now. So you can heat the seat either with this button here, or cool the seat with this button here, or you can do it right up here in the LCD touch interface as well. Moving down the center console, we have 2 large cup holders, easily able to accommodate large takeout drinks. Small storage cubby right there in front of it is able to fit a wallet, napkins, things like that inside there. That's also where you'll find your USB input, your auxiliary input, and a 12-volt power outlet. An interesting touch is that this dashboard is not floating like you'll see in some of the competition, but instead is completely open right here on the bottom. So there's this completely open area. Also part of the center console is this large and softly padded armrest. It opens to reveal a very, very large storage bin down there. You can see really quite how large and deep that is. We have a second tier right here for your smaller knickknacks. Over on the driver's side, we have an LCD instrument cluster that is a combination of physical and LCD elements. So the numbers on this tachometer dial right over here and the numbers on the speedometer dial on the other side are actually physical elements, but basically everything else you're seeing is part of the LCD. The display is controlled via two different button banks on the steering wheel. We have one button bank controlling the right portion of the screen and an essentially identical button bank controlling the left. The farthest right third of the screen is a static display. So this is showing us our lane departure warning and mitigation system. If we turn that on or off, you'll just get the needle right there. We also have our range to empty and the fuel gauge at the bottom. And if we did have cruise control active, you would see cruise control information in that screen as well. To the left side of the screen, we have our intelligent all-wheel drive display showing right there at the moment. We also can get fuel economy or just close that off and just get a needle. We have our engine temperature below. In addition to things like our trip odometer and fuel economy right there, we have a dedicated fuel economy screen. We can also get information on driver assistance systems, turn things like traction control, blind spot warning on and off, collision warning, etc. We can also change the way certain systems behave or see that intelligent all-wheel drive display I showed you earlier. In addition, inside settings is where you'll find the setting to change the way the dynamic dampers in this particular vehicle work. Dynamic dampers are again part of the all-wheel drive package, so every MKC gets them if you get all-wheel drive. Inside this drive control module, we have three different options. We have handling in D, and this is where you change the way the suspension behaves, comfort, normal, or sport, and it is linked to the drive selection. So whether you're in drive or whether you're in sport. We can also change that again in sport down here between normal and sport. And we can also change the way the transmission and the engine behave in sport. I do like the ability to change the way the dynamic damping system behaves, but it is a little bit buried in here. I would prefer a physical button somewhere that makes it a little bit easier to change. You can also adjust your My Key settings over there. The center portion of that display is controlled via the button bank on the right side of the steering wheel. We have just three options: entertainment, compass, and phone. You can use this display to see your call history, speed dials, etc. You can view a compass right there on the screen. If we were navigating somewhere, we would get turn-by-turn directions right inside there. Those infotainment details do include track information depending on the device that you're playing from. You can also change the source, but you can't use this to browse playlists in this display. Moving out to the steering wheel, we get this new Lincoln steering wheel. Sport grips right up top. It is leather wrapped in all versions of the MKC. Shift paddles on the back, up on the right, down on the left. There's a lot of buttons going on here. There's the buttons I showed you earlier controlling that portion of the screen. These buttons, again, control that sort of center portion right there. We have our infotainment buttons over here. Volume up, down, track forward, backward with hang up and pickup buttons, voice command button, and a mute button. On this side, we do have the buttons for our radar cruise control system. In our particular model, the steering wheel is also heated. You will find the controls for the lane departure, warning, and mitigation system right over here on the turn signal stalk. That's the stalk right over there. There's a button right at the end as indicated by that graphic. That's how you turn it on and off. One last word about this wood trim as well as the fit and finish quality on this cabin. This is probably the best vehicle that Lincoln has ever built when it comes to this. This is a very attractive wood trim option. Before we go out on the road, we need to talk about the active damper technology that the MKC has standard on all all-wheel drive models and is available for $695 on the front-wheel drive model. Making things very basic, there are two different things with the suspension that you can change to make the suspension feel very different. You can change the springs and you can change the dampers. The vehicle is supported by the springs, and springs can be what people call soft or hard. Hard springs resist motion, so as you're running over something on the road, it resists the motion of the wheel up into the wheel well. Soft springs allow the wheel to travel a little bit further. Dampers are what help keep the oscillation of the spring in check. So without dampers in a vehicle, you get a very floaty ride. You've probably seen them on the highway, that car that's just sort of bouncing along on the highway. It looks a little bit out of control. Dampers help keep all of that motion in control, and they too can be what's referred to as either soft or hard. A hard damper will resist motion in either direction. A soft damper will not resist that motion quite as much. In very general terms, vehicles with soft suspensions have both soft springs and soft dampers. Cars with hard suspensions have both hard springs and hard dampers. It's quite logical that way. But when you get a vehicle like this with dynamic dampers, in order to be able to give this car a soft feel or a hard feel out on the road, they all have to use soft springs because the only thing we can adjust is the damper in this system. So that means the spring rate is the same, but the car can control how the damper responds and reacts to that spring. That's very important to know because the suspension will feel very different in any vehicle with an active damper, especially the MKC. But what makes this different is that this is one of the few vehicles in this segment where a large portion of them on the dealer lot will have that dynamic damper technology. The prime benefit for a dynamic damping system like this is the ability to choose between hard and soft dampers on a whim. So you can change this vehicle from sport to normal to comfort at the click of a button. In addition to that, it allows the vehicle to dynamically change the way it's interacting with the road surface. So depending on what the road surface is doing, the vehicle can respond by altering the damping ratios on all four corners. The dynamic suspension system that is standard on all the all-wheel drive models really defines the way the MKC feels out on the road. So let's talk about that first. This suspension system is tuned so that way when it's in the comfort mode, it is easily the softest among its direct competitors. That means that we get the best ride out on gravel roads like we're on right here. Most of the entries in this segment are a little bit too firm for rougher gravel roads like we're on right now. As a result of this dynamic suspension system, I'm going to have to give the MKC 10 out of 10 points when it comes to the ride. 9 out of 10 points if you get the regular front-wheel drive version without the dynamic suspension system. On the flip side, when we're on winding mountain roads like the one that we're on right now, the suspension can feel a little bit too soft. It can feel a little bit boat-like, especially in the comfort mode. Now, of course, this is a dynamic suspension system, so I can put the vehicle in sport mode, which really firms up the suspension, but we still get soft springs. We just get firmer damping in the sport mode. As a result of this dynamic suspension system, we have to separate handling feel from actual handling numbers. The MKC is very light for this segment. In fact, the only things in this segment that are lighter than this are the Acura RDX and the Range Rover Evoque. And the Evoque is a decent amount smaller. With wide 245 width tires and a very well-designed suspension system, handling numbers are actually excellent, and I'm talking about actual road holding ability. I'm going to give this between 8 and 9 out of 10 points when it comes to road holding ability. 8 out of 10 points in the front-wheel drive format, 9 out of 10 points in the all-wheel drive form. The decision to only use 4-cylinder engines under this hood means that the front end of this vehicle did not have to be designed to accommodate larger and heavier engines. That's really helped reduce weight up front. So the MKC does not feel as front heavy as something like an Audi Q5 or a Volvo XC60. On the downside, the very numb power steering and the quick steering ratio, combined with this dynamic suspension system, make this vehicle feel less connected to the driver. So in terms of feel, I'm going to have to give this 6 out of 10 points. Now on the flip side of that, if you prefer a vehicle with an excellent highway ride and a more isolated feel overall, there definitely are people out there that prefer that, this is definitely the kind of vehicle for you. When it came to acceleration, I ran from 0 to 60 in 6.15 seconds in this vehicle, which is almost exactly the same as Volvo's twin-scroll turbo T6 model. Overall, I'm going to give this 8 to 9 out of 10 points, 8 out of 10 points in the 2-liter turbo model, 9 out of 10 points in the 2.3-liter turbo model. Even though we only have 285 horsepower under this hood, which is lower than you'll find in certain versions of the competition, the light curb weight really helps the performance in this vehicle. That light curb weight also helps us out when it comes to braking. Stopping distances were very short, and fade resistance was excellent. Lincoln has fitted an active noise cancellation system to all MKC models sold in the United States, and as a result, I'm going to give this 9 out of 10 points when it comes to cabin noise. At 50 miles an hour, the road noise came in at 68 decibels, which is among the quieter entries in this segment. Now, the one thing active noise cancellation systems generally can't do for us is isolate engine noise, and we do get a little bit more engine noise in the MKC than we do get in some of the competition. And since this is an all 4-cylinder engine lineup, some of the noises are not quite as refined as you'll find in the competition. Over about 764 miles, I have been averaging 20.4 miles per gallon in this 2.3-liter all-wheel drive model. Therefore, I'm going to give this about 6 out of 10 points when it comes to fuel economy. The Lincoln engineers decided to tune this drivetrain towards performance, not necessarily fuel economy. It's really obvious when you take a look at the all-wheel drive system and where it's sending power. The clutch pack in the center of this system spends an awful lot of time either in partial or full lockup, sending a decent amount of power to the rear. And that's going to be less efficient than a front-wheel drive vehicle. Pricing for 2015 is fairly easy to understand, and the MKC is one of the least expensive vehicles in this segment. Things start at $33,100 for that front-wheel drive 2-liter model. If you want all-wheel drive on that model, you do have to add $2,495. Now that may sound like an expensive all-wheel drive system, but you do have to keep in mind that it comes with the dynamic suspension. The least expensive 2.3-liter 4-cylinder model is $40,145, and all-wheel drive and the dynamic suspension are standard. The least expensive model with navigation will set you back $36,755, and our model as tested rang in at $49,500. The model we've been looking at is an almost fully loaded regular model. Now Lincoln does take things to the next level with their Black Label series. The Black Label series is all about interior refinement as well as customization. customization. In addition to Alcantara headliners, upgraded leather, leather door panels, etc., we also get unique wood trim and unique colors available on the outside. The Black Label package is not about performance, it's about luxury improvements and customization. So we are not forced to get all-wheel drive or the 2.3-liter engine under the hood. Priced between $47,000 and $56,000, it's quite unique in this segment because we get a wider variety of customization options on the interior, we get different leather options on the inside, we get different colors available, we get unique exterior colors available as well. In fact, you won't find this level of customization on most entries in this segment, other than something like that Range Rover Evoque. And the Range Rover Evoque is considerably more expensive than the MKC. The fact that the MKC is a strict 4-cylinder turbocharged engine lineup really isn't a problem in this luxury category because 4-cylinder engines are the way this entire segment is going. Even Lexus's NX now has a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine under the hood in addition to the hybrid drivetrain. Now the one thing missing from the MKC is a hybrid drivetrain, and I really like the one that Ford and Lincoln have going now. I would have liked to see the MKZ's hybrid drivetrain under this hood. Maybe that will come soon. Both of Lincoln's engines excel over the NX 200T's 2-liter turbocharged engine. The power delivery is better, the power curve is also better, so is the torque curve. I would much rather drive these engines than the NX 200T's engine. Unfortunately, I think the NX 200T is a better handling and better feeling vehicle. Now, the actual handling numbers aren't that far apart, but this feels much larger and much softer than the NX. Of course, if you're after something that's this size and more compliant out on the road, then the MKC is definitely the vehicle for you. This has an excellent highway ride. Of course, if you get the all-wheel drive system, we also get the dynamic damping package, which allows you to select between a very classic, very soft Lincoln ride and a much firmer, sportier ride. We just don't get any additional engagement behind the wheel. Versus Volvo's XC60, which is a very direct competitor to this, we have some interesting things going on. First off, Volvo has also committed to a strict 4-cylinder engine lineup eventually. That means that at this moment you find 4, 5, and 6-cylinder turbocharged engines under that Volvo's hood. You also find a mixture of 8-speed transmissions, 6-speed transmissions, and available all-wheel drive. That options list over at Volvo really is a mess right now. That means the comparisons do get a little bit tricky. If you're taking a look at the front-wheel drive version, then Volvo's using a turbocharged or a turbocharged and supercharged engine under the hood and 8-speed automatics. You'll get much better fuel economy in those front-wheel drive XC60s. If you're taking a look at the all-wheel drive model, the base all-wheel drive model has less power than this 2.3-liter engine we're taking a look at here. That would be Volvo's 2.5-liter 5-cylinder engine and 6-speed automatic. Slower to 60, it also doesn't perform quite as well as far as passing maneuvers go. However, Volvo also offers a 3-liter inline-6 turbocharged engine, which is very comparable to BMW's 3-liter inline-6. It's incredibly smooth compared to this engine. It also delivers more power, more torque, and a much broader torque RPM band. With the MKC, Lincoln has created something very different, and part of that really is that Black Label package as well. They did not create a duplicate or a Lincoln version of the BMW X3. They did not set about trying to create one either. Instead, they've tried to go their own direction in this very crowded segment. And I actually think that's refreshing because when you take a look at most vehicles out there, they're all trying to be excellent, dynamic, on-road handling kind of vehicles. And that means that we have two gaping holes in this segment. We don't have anything that's truly good off-road, even to this day, and we don't have anything other than this Lincoln MKC that gives you a supple highway ride. What's most interesting about that, however, is that the MKC really can compete with the German competition or the English competition as far as handling ability goes. So this handles very, very well. It actually is quite similar to the Audi Q5 or the Volvo XC60 or even the Lexus NX. However, it has a very different feel out on the road. It's much softer, it's much more comfortable, much more compliant on a highway ride. With that Black Label package, they've also given us an ability to customize the interior that you don't find in the rest of the competition. When it comes to value, it is really hard to do better than the Lincoln in this segment. This is $1,380 less expensive than the Lexus NX 200T, with which it very directly competes. Aside from the MKC, the NX is by far the least expensive entry in this segment. Things just continue to build and build when we take a look at the Europeans. This is $3,300 less expensive than the Volvo, $4,800 less expensive than the Mercedes, $5,400 less expensive than the BMW, and a whopping $6,200 less than the Audi Q5. Now you do have to keep in mind that the Q5 does come standard with all-wheel drive and this does not, but it's still a very large difference. You'll notice I've excluded the Acura RDX because in my mind the RDX is more of an MKX competitor because of its size. However, if you did want to compare it to the MKC, it will still be more expensive at $35,095 starting. Speaking of that MKX, the MKX starts at $38,009, so it is a pretty big difference between the two. So where does that leave us, and where does that leave the MKC? It actually leaves us in a very good place, because the MKC is the first Lincoln in a long time that can really compete head-on with the Japanese and European luxury entries in any segment. The last time we've really been able to say that about Lincoln was the Lincoln LS. Before you start asking where that leaves Lincoln's MKS and MKZ, it actually leaves them in the same category that they're already in. They don't directly compete with any of the European vehicles. The MKZ is much larger than a BMW 3 Series. The MKS decently larger than a BMW 5 Series. They're also front-wheel drive vehicles competing in a category that is almost entirely rear-wheel drive. This compact crossover category, however, is different because we do get entries in this category that are not rear-wheel drive by default. Audi's Q5, for instance, is based on a front-wheel drive platform. Volvo's XC60 very obviously is, as well as Lexus's NX. This is also the first time in a long time that Lincoln is delivering a vehicle that is exactly the same size as the competition. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2015 Lincoln MKC. Be sure and hit that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos. Take a look at those related videos at the bottom of this channel. Thumbs up the video, comment on the video. Tell me what you liked and didn't like about the MKC. You can also find me over at facebook.com/AlexandAutos, over at Twitter, and you can always email your questions to alex@alexandautos.com. I'll see you next week. My comparison to the Ford Escape is an epilogue in this video because I really didn't think that it belonged in the main video. I've never compared any of the other entries in this segment with any of their more plebeian neighbors. Now, the difference between the Ford Escape and the Lincoln MKC is just as large as the relations between any of the other members in this segment. Just like the Lexus NX does not feel like a Toyota RAV4, this does not feel like a Ford Escape. Now, some of that can be good and some of that can be bad. I think the Ford Escape actually has a little bit more road feel than the model we're taking a look at here because of the dynamic damper technology that we get in this model. In addition, this is not just a reskinned Ford Escape. They've actually done some significant changes to the overall platform in order to turn it into a Lincoln. It's wider, it's heavier, it has different engines, it has that dynamic damper ability, and it has a vastly different interior. Is the Lincoln worth it as an upgrade over the Ford? That's not a question I can answer so easily because it really depends on your personal preference and how much you value luxury. Because if you don't value luxury at all, then any vehicle in the luxury segment is not going to be worth it over any vehicle in the mass market segment. So if someone asks you, is the Lexus LS worth it over a Toyota Camry, you'll probably say no. Is a Rolls-Royce worth it over a Chrysler 300? You'll probably say no as well.